Prevention and Response video course. This video was created as an important part of increasing staff awareness of what constitutes sexual abuse and sexual harassment, and what to do upon receiving a report of, or having knowledge, suspicion, or information regarding an incident of sexual abuse or harassment of a resident or parolee. It also addresses agency, policy for reporting any act of retaliation, reporting an incident of sexual abuse, or participating in an investigation of an allegation of sexual abuse. This video is designed as an initial training for community-based residential program staff, and also as a refresher training for CBRP employees. At the end of this video, each viewer will be able to define at least 5 of the 6 key terms defined by PREA and CBRP policies, list the 4 steps in the risk screening assessment process, list the 4 actions an employee must take as a first responder to a first-hand report of sexual abuse. Name the person an employee should contact when uncertain about the appropriateness of contact with a resident or parolee. Our first objective is to define at least 5 of the 6 key terms defined by PREA and CBRP policies. The definitions that follow come from the PREA Prisons and Jail Standards and Community Confinement Standards, May 2012, and CBRP policies. Term 1. PREA is the acronym for the Prison Rape Elimination Act of 2003. PREA was voted in unanimously by Congress and signed into law by President George W. Bush. Term 2, staff, means all employees, contractors, and volunteers bear equal responsibilities and culpability. Therefore, for the purposes of this video, the term staff will refer to any person who works directly for the agency, any employee of another agency assigned to work in a CBRP facility, any contractor, including vendors who provide services to parolees, or any volunteer, including interns. Staff also includes employees of other agencies who are assigned to work in a CBRP facility. Staff applies to all persons in security, medical, mental health, counseling, educational, vocational, institutional, or field parole positions, volunteers, and anyone who directly supervises a resident or parolee. Term 3, sexual abuse. Per agency policy, sexual abuse is when a resident or parolee is subjected to unwanted sexual contact with another resident or any sexual contact with a staff member. As defined by the PREA standards, sexual abuse covers a broad range of sexual activity, including non-physical behavior. Prison rape includes any sexual contact between a resident and a staff member, and unwanted sexual acts between residents, not just violent sexual assaults. Term 4. Resident-on-resident sexual abuse means any coerced or non-consensual sexual contact between residents. Sexual abuse of a resident by another resident is based on lack of consent. If the resident does not consent, is coerced by overt or implied threats of violence, or is unable to consent to or refuse any of these acts, it is considered sexual abuse under PREA. Term 5. Staff on resident or staff on parolee sexual abuse means any sexual conduct or contact between any staff member and a resident or parolee. Note that New York state law is broader than PREA in regard to employees who supervise parolees. PREA only applies to parolees who are residents confined or detained in a community confinement facility. Penal Law 130.05 applies to all persons subject to community supervision. Term 6. Sexual harassment is a form of derogatory treatment of a resident or parolee. It includes repeated and unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, or verbal comments, gestures, or actions of a derogatory or offensive sexual nature by one resident or parolee directed toward another, and repeated verbal comments or gestures of a sexual nature to any parolee or resident by a staff member, contractor, or volunteer, including demeaning references to gender, sexually suggestive or derogatory comments about body or clothing, or obscene language or gestures. Staff on resident or parolee sexual harassment is not determined by the response of the recipient, but by the action itself. Although the standard states sexual harassment consists of repeated acts, any sexually harassing act will be considered employee misconduct. In summary, the following are 6 key terms defined by PREA and by agency policies. We will be referring to them often during this class. 1. PREA, the Prison Rape Elimination Act of 2003. 2. Staff, all employees, contractors, and volunteers. 3. Sexual abuse, unwanted sexual contact with another resident or parolee or any sexual contact with a staff member. 4. Resident-on-resident sexual abuse, any coerced or non-consensual sexual contact between residents. 5. Staff-on-resident or staff-on-parolee sexual abuse, any sexual conduct or contact between any staff member and a resident or parolee. 6. Sexual harassment, a form of derogatory treatment of a resident or parolee. Our second objective is to list the 4 steps in the risk screening assessment process. Conduct the interview in private. Utilize the appropriate risk screening form 115.241M for male or 115.241F for female. Notify the PREA coordinator about any residents who trigger. Submit the forms following program procedures. Remember to maintain confidentiality. Our third objective deals with the 4 actions an employee must take as a first responder to a first-hand report of sexual abuse. The department and this agency do not tolerate sexual abuse or sexual harassment. We are by mission and by law dedicated to ensuring the humane treatment of inmates and parolees under our care. Sexual abuse and sexual harassment violate department rules and threaten security. Parolees have the right to be free from sexual abuse and sexual harassment. These acts are not parts of any person's sentence of imprisonment or supervision following release. If you receive a report of sexual abuse, take the following steps. 1. Call 911. 2. The program manager. 3. The parole officer. 4. The contract manager. In our fourth objective, we will name the person an employee should contact if you are uncertain about the appropriateness of your interaction with a resident or parolee. Inappropriate contact. All CBRPs have rules regarding inappropriate contact between staff and residents or parolees. Employees shall not engage in any conversation, communication, dealing, transaction, association, or relationship with any current resident or parolee or former resident and parolee, which is not necessary or proper for the discharge of the employee's duties. Where an employee is uncertain about any of the above, the employee shall notify the program manager. Failure to notify will result in termination and possible prosecution.
Hello, I am Anthony Giannucci, Acting Commissioner of the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. As many of you may know, our agency, as a matter of fundamental policy, continuously strives to prevent employees from falling prey to inmate and parolee manipulation. Unfortunately, despite our policy, some employees continue to engage in misconduct with those under our care. In our ongoing efforts to prevent these incidents, we have developed this video to increase staff awareness of the games that some inmates and parolees may play to convince staff to break the rules. This video will explore serious recent cases of employee misconduct and show our agency's zero-tolerance policy toward such misconduct. Each of these employees was investigated, arrested, convicted, and served time in jail or prison due to their actions. Please pay careful attention to these cases and to the tools we make available to help you strengthen and maintain your professional boundaries. Your coworkers, the inmates and parolees, and the people of New York State rely on you to hold the front line.
As a DOCS employee, it is likely that you will interact with inmates or parolees daily, or possibly only occasionally. attempts to manipulate you into doing something that is against agency policy or against the law are bound to happen. Your reaction to these attempts will determine the safety of your fellow staff, the community, and the inmates and parolees in our care. Although the majority of those under our care are inmates, we must remember that parolees are former inmates and can have similar goals of manipulating staff. Although the number of employees who engage in misconduct with inmates and parolees is extremely small, these instances can and have led to shocking breaches of security and even loss of life. The common thread in the success of inmate manipulation is the breakdown or absence of professional boundaries. This video will explore serious recent cases of employee misconduct. Due to these employees' lack of effective boundaries, the policies meant to maintain the safety and security of their facilities and protect the public broke down with disastrous consequences. First, we will clarify the meaning of the terms we will be using. To manipulate means to control or change another by artful and unfair means to one's own advantage. Inmates and parolees who seek to manipulate staff are trying to take control of their environment and circumstances away from the departmental staff that maintain that control. Inmates and parolees are convicted criminals. Before their convictions, many of them learn to meet their needs through lying, cheating, stealing, and generally harming other people. These inmates and parolees act without conscience and justify and minimize their actions by claiming their victims were stupid, deserved whatever happened to them, or got in the way. Some inmates and parolees just enjoy getting people to do what they want. These patterns of behavior continue after conviction. Remember that any staff member can be influenced by an inmate or parolee with enough time, information, and access. Complacency is a feeling of security, often while unaware of some potential danger or defect. Staff members who do not believe they can be manipulated are more likely to become targets of manipulation. Boundary is a limit of a subject or sphere of activity. The boundaries that individual employees set up governing behavior they will display and behavior they will accept act as the first line of defense against manipulation. At first glance, this photo may not seem dangerous, but it was a photo taken inside Clinton Correctional Facility on former correction officer Gene Palmer's cell phone. Palmer admitted to handing the phone to an inmate and having the inmate take the photo. What would you do if you were present and were asked to be in the picture? This photo is an example of the level of complacency that had to have set in for this picture to exist. Professional conduct can be seen as a range or spectrum. Employees who perform on one end of the spectrum give little attention to their duties, tend to ignore or disregard inmate or parolee requests and concerns, may be abusive verbally, or may use force excessively, and are, in general, neglectful. Those on the other end are those employees who often exhibit warning signs of having inappropriate relationships. They may be on a first-name basis with inmates or parolees, engage in horseplay, become personally involved with the inmate's or parolee's family, and are basically involved too deeply. Those in the middle range are firm, fair, and consistent in their dealings with inmates and parolees. They work within agency policy to ensure safety is maintained and tasks are completed. Complacency can occur at either far end of the spectrum. Remember that inmates or parolees may attempt to manipulate any staff member, regardless of where he or she is on the conduct spectrum. But inmates and parolees are much more likely to attempt to manipulate those employees whose behavior shows that they are at the far ends. Joyce Mitchell, a former DOCS employee, now DOCS inmate, was convicted in September 2015 for introducing contraband into Clinton Correctional Facility and facilitating the escape of inmates David Sweat and Richard Matt in June 2015. According to the Inspector General's findings, Joyce Mitchell generally treated inmates like friends and coworkers. She told investigators that she visited with the guys and that It's like you get a rapport with them because you are in that same room with them every day of the week. In an interview with newscaster Matt Lauer, she describes being overly friendly and even flirtatious with the inmates who worked in her tailor shop.
As part of the job, how close were you and how close did you become to the inmates? Is it fair to say you also became a friend?
It is fair to say that.
Was there flirtation as part of that friendship?
There was.
Did you think that perhaps you were crossing some sort of a line?
I was at first, but then I guess I got a little too comfortable.
And did anybody ever stop you and say, Joyce, back off a little bit, get back behind the desk, treat them like inmates, stop being such a nice person, stop being friends with them?
They never actually told me to stop, but they did say, you're too friendly, you're too nice.
And when they would say that to you, would you stop?
I would a little bit, but at the time that everything happened, I was going through a time where I didn't feel like my husband loved me anymore. And I guess it was just me. I was going through depression. And I guess they saw my weakness. And that's how it all started.
So you were looking for something. You were looking for attention.
Yes, their attention made me feel good.
Former correction officer Gene Palmer, convicted in February of 2016 for promoting prison contraband and official misconduct, also aided the Clinton escape through his overly friendly relationship with the inmates. It appears that Gene Palmer was also looking for attention in prison. Upon interview, an inmate described Palmer's treatment by inmates as if Palmer were a rock star, and that whatever door he came in, they flocked to him. Palmer described himself as the go-to guy to whom everybody looked up to in jail. He testified,
I was one of the people that they could come to and say, hey, this guy's giving me a problem, or my packages, or I can't get a hold of my wife. I need to speak to my counselor. So when my job as an escort officer, I can go pretty much anywhere I wanted to. I'm mobile, so I can go see their counselor and say, hey, what can we do about this?
His behavior toward inmates Matt and Sweat showed that a bond of friendship was developing between them. Palmer testified that Matt gave him tips about potential trouble and that he and Matt had developed such a trusting relationship that Matt had vowed to kill any inmate who assaulted Palmer.
Richard Matt was a talented artist, and it wasn't long before his artwork became a kind of currency behind those prison walls. We now know that Correction Officer Gene Palmer accepted and transported the paintings outside the prison, and the trading that went into that transaction led to trouble. It was how Mitchell was able to get the tools hidden in hamburger meat delivered to the inmates.
Both David Sweat and Richard Matt used their talent to impress and disarm employees. Their artwork became a kind of currency they used to get goods and favors from staff. Over several years, Matt gave Palmer at least 13 paintings and drawings, most depicting members of Palmer's family. Palmer testified,
After I accepted the first one, then he kept coming back. Well, do you want somebody in your family drawn, or friends, or whatever relative?
Palmer and Mitchell purchased paints and other art materials in exchange for paintings and drawings. According to Sweat, he and Matt created paintings and gave them to staff exceptionally cheap because they knew at some point they were going to be in a bind and might need help with something. Victor Cruz, a former Docks correction officer, was arrested in 2014 for smuggling contraband into Green Haven Correctional Facility. Cruz seemed to be looking for something else from the inmates under his charge: money.
What was your motivation when you started bringing in the contraband?
Greed.
Why?
Just greed. It was just money. It was easy for me. Again, I got complacent. I was too easy. I made it easy, I guess. It was just mostly greed.
So how do employees end up getting into situations where they end up as inmates? There are common themes to inmate or parolee strategies when they are attempting to get special favors, an intimate relationship, contraband, etc. from an employee by manipulating staff. Inmates and parolees select their targets by observing staff members carefully. As noted before, those on the outer ends of the spectrum of professional conduct will often be targeted as easier prey.
What is it?
Hey, CEO, can I grab the washcloth?
Yeah, right there. Go ahead.
All right, thanks.
You seem upset. What's wrong?
My husband usually calls me by now, and he hasn't called.
Student, but she's going to have to take a year off from college. We're going to have to get some money someplace, you know. I can't work overtime. Try to get another job, you know. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Oh, crazy.
Everything okay?
How we doing? Yeah. You know,
sounds like you're having some troubles there.
You know, trying to send my oldest to college next year, and trying to tell her to take a year off. We can't afford it.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
Next, the inmate or parolee will try to befriend the targeted employee by learning about the employee's personal hobbies and interests and personal life, then showing a common interest or get another inmate to show interest. Another tactic is to stage a fight to pretend to protect the employee or give the employee real or false tips about misbehavior, contraband, or weapons.
Hey, I see you taking some nice supplements there. You got your weight up. They don't let us have that kind of stuff in the jail, and I'll tell you what. I used to do this stuff outside before I got incarcerated. I was in all different weight classes and bodybuilding, and that stuff really works well. But I can't get it in here.
No, you cannot.
Is there any way we can work out something where, you know, you bring some of this stuff in for me and let me get my weight back up?
I'm really upset. I'm afraid he's going to divorce me.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry about that.
Thank you.
Wow, I've been through a divorce and it's so painful. I'm sorry that you're going through something like that.
My kids are the same way. You know, I want them to go to college too. You know, because I want them to be better than what I am. And you know, but money's tough.
No matter what your situation is, you want the best for your kids. But you know, it's so tough. The money.
Yeah.
Once the inmate or parolee feels he or she has a good rapport with the employee, the testing begins. This means asking for special favors, touching the staff member, trying to get the staff member to bring in contraband, or to break other rules.
I'll tell you what I can do. Inmate Jones, he's always bringing in K2 to sell it out in the yard, and he stores it behind these machines while he's working here.
Really? He keeps it here?
Absolutely. And then what happens is after his program, he takes it out in the yard and he sells it. What we can do is if you bring me in some of these supplements, I'll drink them right here. Anytime he brings in anything and he stores it behind that machines, I'll let you know.
Oh, I'm so sorry that you're going through something like this.
Thank you.
You know, if we were together, I would never treat you like this. I would call every single time I was supposed to, and you'd feel special.
Yes, I mean, so I know you're having, you know, troubles with money at home, like as I am. But you know, I was thinking if you were to bring in, you know, a couple packs of cigarettes for me, what I could do is people want them here.
That seems pretty harmless.
Yeah, so I mean, I could actually sell them here and get some money, and I could help you out, and you know, at the same time, you'd be helping me out.
If employees allow themselves to be influenced during the befriending and testing phases of the setup, they have already passed into a non-professional part of the spectrum. There are many warning signs that might alert staff that they or another staff member might have weak professional boundaries and be at risk of becoming involved in an inappropriate relationship with an inmate or parolee. Treating inmates or parolees like friends, using first names or nicknames, or people you would like to have a relationship with, for example, flirting or touching. Telling sexual or otherwise offensive jokes, or listening to inmates or parolees tell them. Spending unnecessary time with an inmate or parolee to avoid boredom or to chat, or changing posts or schedules to hang out with him or her. Showing favoritism or not enforcing rules for particular inmates or parolees. Taking up an inmate's or parolee's cause or grievance, or trying to protect him or her from the consequences of his or her actions. Knowing a lot of unnecessary personal information about an inmate or parolee, or allowing him or her to know too much personal information about you. This includes contact with the inmate's or parolee's family that is not related to your job. Staff personal problems. Tragedy is unavoidable in life. People lose loved ones, divorce, or suffer serious financial or medical issues, you must realize that your boundaries may be shaky during these times when you may not be thinking clearly. Bringing in contraband or exchanging food or gifts. This can be particularly dangerous due to the fact that you can easily be incapacitated through adulterated food. This list is just a brief example of some of the signs. If you are unsure about a particular situation, you should reach out to peers or your supervisor for clarification.
When did they start asking you for favors?
A few months before they decided to get out, they were asking me for things.
So what did you bring them?
I would bring cookies, brownies, stuff like that.
Pretending that you were bringing them in for yourself?
Yes.
How often did you do that, Joyce?
I did it a lot.
Mitchell brought a variety of contraband into the inmates.
I was there by myself. On the weekends, it's just so dead there. Nothing to do there, just you and your porter. So the porter that was there, my porter, I just built a relationship with him. It was just something simple, just, talking. We talked about his case, his situation, what's going on. It could be whatever, like I said, sports, politics, anything current, what's going on in the news, whatever. And then it just starts with something simple with it, I'm done with my newspaper, or, I give it to him. I had a magazine on me, I'll give it to him. I had like leftover food or food I haven't even touched. I actually, you want this? I don't want it. I was going to throw it away anyway. I'd give it to him. And right there is where I guess the fishing process starts.
Once the employee has engaged in the overfamiliar behavior or rule violations, the inmate or parolee can spring the trap and escalate the list of favors to a list of demands and use the leverage of prior actions to threaten the staff member to cooperate.
Theo, you got a minute?
Yeah, what's up?
Listen, I just got an inside word that there's going to be a fight out in the yard this week between two gangs.
Do you know when?
I'll tell you what, you've been bringing in these protein drinks. They've been helping a lot, but now I need you to start bringing me in some alcohol.
Oh, there's no way.
Unless you start bringing in some alcohol, I'm going to give those containers to the sergeant and tell him you've been bringing in that drinks for me.
Okay, Tracy, we're here today to discuss conditions of your parole. And one of the things that you have to do in order to meet your obligations that you have is you have to come to a certain number of meetings. And you haven't been coming to those.
Oh, Julie, don't worry about that. I am doing fine in my recovery. Everything's going great. Don't worry about a couple of missed meetings. Just type in that I went. It's no problem. I mean,
I can't. I'm sorry. I can't do that.
Well, I mean, if people started looking at it, they might start looking at us. And I'm sure you don't want people to know what we're doing.
No, it looks like he's going to make parole. Yeah. September 21st. Excellent. All right. Thank you.
Hey Jim.
Hey, how you doing today?
Good. Things are good. Things are good. Are things better with you?
A little bit.
Starting to help out a little bit? Listen, I was thinking, again, no disrespect, but thank you for bringing in the cigarettes.
Well, that was nothing. That was easy.
Now that you brought those in, though, I was thinking that if you could bring me in a cell phone, because that could get even more money. I'm telling you, that's going to help you out even more. You've already brought in the cigarettes, right? So,
yes.
And I haven't told anybody about that.
Well, we said we wouldn't tell.
You know what I mean? I haven't told anybody. So, I was thinking.
My job's on the line if you don't.
Oh, yeah.
You know that.
Yeah, okay. So, how about that cell phone?
Inmates and parolees may not escalate demands if they are getting what they want, or may not threaten the employee if he or she goes along with the more serious requests. The items Mitchell brought in escalated to serious and illegal contraband that were directly meant to effect an escape.
If you can, to the best of your ability, Mrs. Mitchell, tell me the complete list of things that you gave them.
I give them the star bit, 4 full-size hex blades, and I give them chisel and punch. That's all that I give them.
That's a lot.
It is.
And then they started asking for other things. When Richard Matt comes to you and says, Joyce, I need a star-shaped drill bit. That's a lot different than cookies and brownies.
Yeah.
And what did you think?
At first I'm like, I can't get you that, but then he's like, I need it.
For what?
At first they didn't tell me, and then after they did, it was because they were going to try to escape.
Had you already given it to them at that stage?
Yes.
Were you ever nervous? Were you afraid you'd get caught doing it?
I actually was, because they're supposed to check our bags every morning when we come in, and they're supposed to check them when you go out, but they never did.
Mitchell admitted to writing love notes to inmate Sweat and repeated sexual contact with inmate Matt. She stated that she was seduced, in part, by believing that a younger guy would actually like an older woman. Inmate Sweat reported to investigators that he wrote love notes and others back and forth to Mitchell to exploit her feelings and placate her.
He started off with, listen, can you, is it possible, can you bring me in some, workout supplements, just pills, pre-workouts. So, I said to myself, it's small, it's not nothing big, it could be for myself, it could be for me. So I started off with that, brought that in. That led to, can you bring in some alcohol in a water bottle? So again, I said to myself, it looks like water, Once I dump the water, I'll put the alcohol in, what a couple of water bottles is going to do, of alcohol is going to do. So I brought that in. And then that led to more alcohol, more bottles of water. Again, just I built a good rapport with him, That led to just, okay, now I can make money out of it. Because when it first started, it was just mostly for him. I would get money, I'll buy the supplement and the alcohol. I wasn't making no profit out of it in the beginning. But then it turned into a big profit. And now I said to myself, man, I'm making money out of this. So one thing led to another. I started off with, supplements to creatine, to alcohol, to clothes. I brought in clothes, I made money off of that also. Then it led to marijuana. I brought in weed in, and brought in by the pound. Made a lot of money off of that also. Electronics, DVD players, DVD TV monitor, DVD movies, cell phones, pans, cooking stuff, cooking the cells.
Notably, there were many similarities between the Clinton escape in 2015 and the escape from Elmira Correctional Facility by inmates Timothy Vale and Timothy Morgan in July 2003. The Elmira Escape Report, published in March 2004, states that vocational instructor Gary Silvers described inmate Vale as more like a coworker than an inmate. These perceptions allowed Vale to gain the trust of staff, just as in the Clinton escape. Like Matt and Sweat, Vale was also a talented artist. He painted decorations and murals for the facility, and paintings for individuals. Voc instructor Silvers admitted bringing cigarettes into Vale in exchange for a Jets painting. Vale was able to advise staff to order the flesh-toned paints for the seasonal piece shown, and he later used those paints to create the dummy heads that he and Morgan left in their beds to cover their escape. Similar to Mitchell, Silvers bought items such as food and cigarettes into Elmira for Vale. Also like Mitchell, the contraband he bought in escalated to the point where he bought in a map of the Adirondacks to show Vale where he went hunting. In both escapes, the inmates were able to smuggle items back to their units to use as tools to cut or dig holes through which they were able to break out of their cells. Due to employees vouching for them, or their reputation as good inmates, none of them were frisked. It is unavoidable that people make mistakes. But, especially due to our mission of public safety, the serious mistakes demonstrated today have serious personal consequences, such as shame and guilt about violating the trust of your family, friends, and the public. Disciplinary actions such as suspension, loss of time, or loss of pay. Termination for serious violation of agency policy. And arrest and conviction for violation of state or federal law.
Again, one thing led to another, everything just exploded. Then my work came crashing down, when I got arrested,
Looking back now, did your actions make Greenhaven a less safer place?
Yes.
Did there ever come a time, knowing that you said this needs to stop?
At the time, no.
Can you explain what impact this had on you personally, and then can you explain what impact this had on your family?
Oh, when everything happened, my arrest, everything, my work came crashing down. I lost everything. When I mean I lost everything, I lost everything. I'm probably in the negative right now. I lost my place, lost my car, lost financially gone. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing to myself, to my family. Impacted them also. It affected not just me, but just a lot of people. This stuff doesn't just affect the person that actually happens, it affects the loved ones also. So, and there's this stuff that I wasn't even thinking about when I was doing it at the time.
The first time you put on a pair of state greens?
I never thought I would be wearing greens when this happened. I mean, when you wear the state, when you wear the correction uniform, obviously you're held to a higher standard. You feel good about yourself. You feel proud. You're in law enforcement. You're a correction officer. And I felt good at the time. Now that I'm an inmate wearing greens, and I see the officers right now I'm being escorted and being chained up, and it's not a good feeling. It's a time where I'd be thinking about where I was doing that at one point. It's not a good feeling. This sucks. It really does. It's not worth it. It really isn't.
Was there ever a point where you felt like hurting yourself?
Oh, yeah.
Or committing suicide?
Yeah, I felt like jumping right off the bridge, Mid-Hudson Bridge, up Poughkeepsie Bridge.
Can you describe that? That feeling?
It's not a good feeling, I had a good career, I had a good job. I lost everything. Everything's gone, pension's gone, everything. Lost just a good career. And just when something like that happens to you and you lose everything, I have a son, it affected him also. I just felt loneliness. I felt restless. I felt like there was no end in sight. My mind was just going all over the place. I felt I was in depression mode. It was really hard. I walked to the bridge a couple of times and I thought about jumping over. So it wasn't easy.
Fortunately, you can make choices about your behavior that can lessen the chance of being targeted for manipulation. Be prepared. Don't get caught off guard. Anticipate that you will be asked to bend and break the rules. Your first defense against this is to review directives, the employee's manual, local policies, and departmental memos. Be assertive. Say no when the answer is no. If you don't know the answer, say no and find out. It is safer to change a no to a yes than a yes to a no. Address misbehavior. Whether or not you decide to document specific issues, you must let the inmates or parolees know when their behavior is unacceptable. Remember, others are watching for your reactions. Don't make it personal. Whether an inmate or parolee is yelling at you, telling you you're gorgeous, or ignoring you, remember that it's not about you. It's about what behavior or response they can get from you. Know yourself. If you are going through a difficult time in your personal life, try not to let the inmates or parolees see it. If they notice and mention a change, make sure to say that it is none of their concern and stay focused on your duties. You may also be able to help peers who seem to be falling into the dangerous behaviors mentioned earlier. Approach the staff member in a private area and tell him or her what you are concerned about. Make sure the employee knows you are sincerely concerned. State the facts of what you saw without judging or blaming. Link the behavior or action to a security issue. Note the effect on observers to the behavior. Listen to your coworker's response and rephrase their response in your own words. He or she may not even realize how the behavior looks to others. Your peer may become emotional or defensive. Remember to maintain a calm and non-judgmental tone. If necessary and possible, offer to go with your peer to talk to a supervisor. Also remember that employees must report any information concerning corruption, fraud, criminal activity, conflicts of interest, misconduct, or abuse by an employee or supervisory staff.
You know, I'm trying to put myself in the position of someone watching this at home, and they're all saying, you know what they're saying. She's hearing these stories every day. She's given them some of the tools they're using.
And she's the monster.
And she did nothing to stop it.
I knew I was in way over my head, so I had to keep going with whatever they were saying.
You didn't go to anyone.
Who could I tell? He bragged about how he had done paintings for several officers. Who they are, I don't know, but who could I trust?
I've never been in prison, but I will tell you, if I were you, I think I would have said, I'm going to go home, I'm going to get my husband, I'm going to get him in a car, and we're going to go to the police, and I'm going to tell the police, with my husband next to me, so I know nobody can harm him, exactly what's going on here.
I should have done that, but I was too scared.
So, if you feel that your professional boundaries are being, or may already have been, weakened, what do you do? If you recognize that your boundaries are weakening, stop the behavior that is making the situation worse. Talk to your peers about the types of behaviors discussed in this video. They, or your supervisor, may be able to give insight into what to do in specific circumstances. Use the resource of the Employee Assistance Program to find support and help with problems you may be experiencing in your personal life. Report inmate attempts to manipulate, extort, or bribe you to violate rules. As we mentioned, people make mistakes. But in the law enforcement environment, mistakes can threaten the safety of those within the walls and the general public. If you are faced with the possibility of violating agency policy to benefit an inmate, a parolee, or yourself, you must ask yourself, how far are you willing to fall once that violation is discovered? The consequences for you will always be better if you report your mistakes early.
Hey, Theo, you got a minute?
Yeah, what's up?
Listen, I was thinking about getting back into my workout routine, and you bring in your protein for yourself. Maybe you can start bringing in some for me. I can let you know when the Jones is bringing in that K2 and hiding it behind the laundry machine.
Well, that is definitely not going to happen. Give me your ID. I'm going to write you up.
You seem a little distracted today. Anything wrong?
Thank you, but we're here to talk about you and the meetings that you've been missing.
Hey, how you doing? I'm good. I'm good. Good. About the money issues. You know, with I overheard what's going on there, and
that's, first of all, it's personal.
Yeah, I know, but I can help you. I can help you, and I mean, you can help me. You know, what I was thinking is maybe just, you know, a couple packs of cigarettes or something. I mean, I could sell those.
I'm not going to bring anything in for you.
No, but just a couple packs.
You're quite inappropriate.
Oh, I know.
You know,
okay.
You've been my porter for a while, but you're quite inappropriate, and it warrants a misbehavior report asking anything like that.
But I do good work for you, though, so
absolutely
that can continue. But
you're over the line of asking for something that would be contraband and me to jeopardize my job.
What advice would you give directly to a security or a civilian staff member who finds themselves at the very beginning stages of what you went through, the very first small request or piece of contraband? What advice would you give to that staff member at that point?
Don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not. I would report it. I would tell the inmate, you know, what are you doing, or whatever. Maybe lock him in. I don't know. But I would definitely report it, and just to cover yourself. And it's not worth it. You know, and it starts from there also. This is before even the front door. This is how it starts. You know, before I even brought that into the front doors, I got comfortable with an inmate. I got to build a good rapport. I shouldn't have went that far.
Did you believe you would be caught?
No, I didn't. I did it for a while. It was too easy for me, and I didn't know how long I was going to do it for. But you know, I just kept doing it and didn't think for a second I was going to get caught.
Unfortunately, in spite of agency policy and training, staff continue to allow their personal boundaries to be worn away. During the development of this video, in August of 2016, former Correction Officer Rasheen Smalls was received into our custody after being convicted for engaging in sexual contact with an inmate at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. If you allow yourself to be one of the few staff members who becomes overly familiar with an inmate or parolee, you will be caught. The oath you swear and the acknowledgments you sign concerning your responsibilities and duties as a New York State DOCS employee make you responsible for knowing and following the policies of the agency and the law. As we stated before, the vast majority of DOCS employees perform their duties with pride and professionalism. Choose to be one of us. Do not choose to become one of the inmates or parolees under our care.
You have just witnessed a few instances of why DOCS maintains a zero-tolerance policy toward employee misconduct with inmates and parolees. After watching this video, I hope you understand the severe consequences of such behavior. The policies and procedures established by the department were created to ensure the safety of those inside and outside the walls of our facilities. Ignoring these policies can endanger the very lives of staff, inmates, parolees, and the people of the state of New York. It can also result in massive expenditures of resources that could have been prevented if an employee recognized the importance of establishing and maintaining his or her professional boundaries and said no. We have the best correctional and community supervision employees in the country. We are proud of the duties entrusted to us by the state of New York. As a result of that trust, each one of us has the responsibility to uphold the laws of this state and this country. Please think of that responsibility the next time an inmate or a parolee attempts to befriend you. We do not want to be looking at your inmate identification card in our next video.